What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. In this video, I'm going to share 3 common deep diving crankbait mistakes I see a lot of new anglers make. Let's get into it. Before we get into the video and start talking about deep diving crankbaits, I gotta call some of you guys out. Only 28% of the guys watching these videos are subscribed to the channel. It's a really easy and free way to support the content that I make here on Fish the Moment, so I'd really appreciate it if you went down below and subscribed to the channel before checking out this video. The first common mistake I see new anglers make when they start trying to fish a deep diving crankbait is that their bait is not making contact with cover or structure. I've found that 90 to 95% of my bites on a deep diving crankbait come after the bait deflects off a piece of cover, like a rock, a stump, or a brush pile, or off the top of hard structure, like a ledge, a hump, or a high spot. If your bait isn't deflecting off a piece of cover, you're not going to trigger a reaction strike from those fish, and you're going to get a lot fewer bites. There are a few easy things you can do to make sure your bait is hitting the bottom or hitting cover and structure. The first thing I do is ensure that my bait lands 30 to 40 feet past the target I'm trying to fish. For example, if I was fishing an offshore brush pile, I would position my boat 40 to 50 feet away from that brush pile, then cast past that brush pile so the bait lands 30 to 40 feet past the brush pile. The reason for this is because with a crankbait, you have to give that bait some time to actually dive down to depth. This might take up to a third or a quarter of your cast. This means that if you land your bait right on top of that brush pile or 10 feet past it, that bait is going to actually reach its apex or the bottom of its dive past the brush pile, and you're never going to hit the bottom, never going to hit the cover, you're not going to generate that reaction strike, and you're not going to catch any fish. Therefore, to ensure your bait is hitting the cover, you need to make sure you cast it far enough past the cover so that it can dive to its maximum depth and actually make contact with the bottom. Another easy way to make sure your deep diving crankbait is hitting the bottom is by choosing the right equipment. For example, if I'm going to fish an offshore spot that's in 6 to 10 foot of water, I'm going to choose a deep diving crankbait that dives 12 to 13 feet deep. This is the Megabass DeepX 300 LBO, and it dives 13 feet deep. As you can see though, this bait has a bill that's absolutely torn apart because I've been grinding it in the rocks in 6 to 8 feet of water all summer. Even though this bait dives really deep, it still works great in that shallower water, and because it dives really quickly into that 8-foot zone, I keep bottom contact the entire cast, and I don't have to worry about not hitting the cover that I'm trying to target. The reason I go with this crankbait, you probably are looking at and like, man, a Megabass deep diving crankbait, gotta be super expensive, and it is, guys, but the reason I go with this one is because it casts really well. And another thing that helps get that bait down to depth is casting distance. I can cast this bait 10 yards further than any other medium diving crankbait on the market that dives in that 10-foot range, so that's why I go with this one, even though it's a little expensive, but the bill on it's nice and big, so it grinds in the rocks really well. You can see that one is torn apart. And another thing you can do to get more casting distance as well, other than choosing a little bit heavier bait, is to go with a longer rod. This is a 7'6" medium heavy action Garcia Veritas crankbait rod. The longer rod allows you to really cast that bait a long distance and not worry about missing those offshore spots. As I start fishing a little bit deeper, let's say in 15 feet of water, I'm gonna go to a crankbait like a Strike King 6XD that I can get down to 17 or 18 feet on a good cast. Again, this bait dives 2 to 3 feet deeper than I need it to, but it allows me to grind the bottom. And as you can see, again, the bill on that crankbait is completely torn up from tearing up the rocks and tearing up the brush. If your crankbait bill is not getting torn up like that, guys, and not getting chipped and stuff, you're not grinding the bottom enough, and you're barely getting in the strike zone. So make sure that your crankbait is really getting roughed up on the bill. It'll make sure that you're getting down where you need to be fishing. Again, I'm throwing a nice long rod, 7'6" Garcia Veritas winch. This is a discontinued model of it from like 10 years ago, but still works. I have a bunch of them, and it allows me to launch that crankbait really well. Then finally, if I want to go even deeper than that, into the 20 to 22 foot range, that's when you pull out the big boy, the Strike King 10XD crankbait. This thing dives 22 to 25 feet deep on a really good cast. Allows me to grind that crankbait in the bottom. This one I have not used, but this is something that I have caught a lot of fish on over the years, grinding those deeper offshore spots. And if you pair this with a long enough rod, a 7'11" Frankenstein by 13 Fishing. I don't even know if they make this rod anymore. Again, super old. But if you pair this big crankbait with a long rod, you can reach those super deep areas out to 20 feet and really grind the bottom. What this means though is that you don't want to pick up a crankbait like a striking 6XD that dives 18 feet and try to force it down to 20 feet of water. I see a lot of guys do that, and you're just not going to be very effective. You need to pick a bait that dives 2 to 3 feet deeper than where you're trying to fish to make sure you're deflecting it off cover and getting as many bites as possible. The second common mistake I see new anglers make when fishing a deep diving crankbait is that they try to fish on calm days. As you can see today, we have some pretty good wind, maybe 5 to 10 miles an hour. And whenever you have wind or moving water in the form of current, deep diving crankbaits are going to be a lot more effective. The reason for this is because wind and current will activate the baitfish and cause them to start feeding on structure and cover. When these baitfish start feeding, the bass will start feeding as well. And it's a lot easier to trick a bass into eating a fake plastic crankbait when they're already aggressive and trying to feed on living baitfish. However, when there's no wind or no current, the baitfish won't be aggressive, therefore the bass won't be very aggressive, and they're a lot less likely to eat a fake plastic crankbait because they're not really in a feeding mood. You can't really trick them as easily on a crankbait when those baitfish aren't really aggressive. Therefore, you need to throw a deep diving crankbait when you have some sort of moving water caused by wind or current. If not, you're really going to struggle to catch them on this bait. The third most common mistake I see new deep diving crankbait fishermen make is not replacing the stock treble hooks on their crankbaits. You guys have no idea how many crankbait fish I've lost over the years by being lazy and not switching out the stock hooks on my crankbaits. It's probably into the hundreds at this point. Every time I get a crankbait out of the box now, even if it's a Megabass that's $20, I'm taking off the stock treble hooks and I'm putting on new ones. When I'm fishing in the winter time, I like to use round bend treble hooks, and when I'm fishing in the summer, I'll go to an EWG style treble hook. That's just my preference, but really at the end of the day, as long as you're changing out those treble hooks for new ones, you're going to be in good shape. One thing you want to be aware of is you don't want to put too big of a hook on that bait because it will hang up more. On this Megabass Deepex 300 LBO, I throw a Gamakatsu EWG treble in a size 4. When I'm throwing the Strike King 6XD, I'm using the exact same treble, that EWG from Gamakatsu, in a size 2. And then when I'm going to a really big deep diving crankbait like a 10XD, I'm either going to use like 2/0 Mustang triple grips, or I might use these Owner Stinger treble hooks, these 1/0s. Both of them work really well on those big crankbaits. But either way, you got to change out those trebles because a lot of times these fish will just swipe at your bait and barely grab a piece of it, and if you have dull hooks, you're going to either not hook that fish or you're going to have it jump off halfway to the boat, and you definitely don't want that to happen. So make sure you're using brand new sharp sticky treble hooks, and even halfway through the day, guys, I know it can be a little bit of a pain, but change out your treble hooks. I actually had a fish that popped off today that I was reeling in halfway to the boat and it came off, and I'd actually not changed out these treble hooks in a trip or two, and so I actually went in and redid these treble hooks, changed them out. I'll even change them out halfway through the fishing day if I'm getting a lot of bites, but it will save you a ton of extra fish. Just kind of get a smattering of hooks if you can afford them, get a little box like this, and if you can change out those hooks, you're going to get a lot more fish in the boat.
If you enjoyed the information in this video, head to our website, fishthemoment.com, then head to the virtual seminars page. Here you'll find a series of recordings from past seminars focused on a variety of bass fishing topics. One topic I briefly covered in this video is how wind and current affect bass behavior. If you check out our How Weather Affects Bass seminar, I'll dive a lot deeper into how weather and lake conditions affect how bass feed and how you can choose the right baits and areas to catch more fish. This includes how wind, sun, water temperature, water clarity, the thermocline, and a lot of other factors dictate how bass behave and how you can adapt your strategies to put more fish in the boat. Definitely check out some of these seminar recordings on our website, fishthemoment.com.
And that's it, guys. Those are the top 3 most common mistakes I see new anglers make when they're fishing deep diving crankbaits. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, share it out with a friend who might struggle with fishing deep diving crankbaits. Also subscribe to the Fish the Moment channel if you want to get more content just like this. Thanks for checking out the video. We'll see you on the next one.